Cynthia Garrett is the host of TBN UK's The London Sessions. She calls it a walk show, not a talk show. It's the latest project in a life that's featured stops on major TV networks and inside an Italian prison.
As a little girl, Cynthia Garrett had dreams of being on TV. But she was sexually abused at the age of 9, which left her broken and numb for many years. In her book, Prodigal Daughter, Cynthia shares how she experienced true freedom from her past and how God opened doors for her career in television.
Super excited.
Cynthia Garrett is here with us now, and we welcome you to our program today.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you here. We just heard in that video piece that you were sexually abused as a child. When something like that happens to a child, the heart is impacted in a way that until you get inner healing, you carry that through life, don't you?
Brokenness. Yeah. And I talk a lot about it because I think people need to have more of an understanding of how those childhood events and traumas can fracture the soul, the heart.
Yeah, it was so interesting in your book to read how, you don't think about this sometimes when you meet people, but how you had learned to set up kind of a wall for people. You became sort of your own God in a way, if you will, determining who will and won't come in and out of your space and what they'll do to you. But as strong as you had become, you wound up marrying someone later in life that you'd only known, what, a month or 3 months or something?
Oh, sure. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. I think I had set up so many walls to protect myself from falling in love with anyone. I could be in and out of love weekly, but it wasn't real because when I was sexually abused within the family structure, and incest damages your ability to be intimate in a number of extra ways on top of the fact that, as a child, you're being sexually abused. I was also raped as a teenager. Yeah. So by the time I got to be in my 20s and 30s, I just was, I knew how to protect myself. And so I think, though, I fell in love, had my first major heartbreak with my college boyfriend, and really and truly, I think in an effort to reclaim my self-esteem, I just got involved with the first good-looking guy that came along that, promised me a rose garden.
But here's the crazy part of it to me, because you stated, and I think this is really true about your person, that you were not going to be a victim despite all these things that had happened to you. But in that marriage, you were a victim. What was it about that relationship that just seemed to pour through or push through even the barriers you'd put up?
I had never experienced emotional and mental abuse in that way before.
So
ever.
Physical, but not emotional and mental.
Yeah, and honestly, the couple of times he was violent with me in the very short period of time we were married, thank God, the verbal abuse was worse than the actual physical abuse. Because, it's funny, I often say, and I said in my book, I became that girl that you look at in the movies and you go, oh my gosh, she's so stupid. Why is she staying with this man? Why doesn't she just leave? Yeah. I became her. Yeah. And for the first time in my life, I really understood how so much of my neediness and brokenness from unconfronted issues from my past were really, they had me in bondage.
Well, out of that relationship, you wound up in an Italian jail. I mean, you didn't even realize that this guy was a major drug dealer, and you got caught up and really accused of being a part of the whole process when you didn't even really understand what was happening. What was your first night in jail like?
Oh boy, man, my first night in jail. Well, here we go. Knew this guy a month in LA. He leaves and convinces me in about another month on the phone that I should run off and change my life and marry him. I run off to Paris, and on my honeymoon, we were married 10 days. All of this happened in the span of 10 days. And it was on our honeymoon. We had gone into Italy. I thought we were going somewhere else. And I found him in the car trafficking cocaine. And through a long series of details, when I was arrested with him, that first night in prison, I remember laying there thinking, God, I've known that you were real my whole life, but if you're real, I really need you to
Be a
reveal
good
yourself.
time to show yourself.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because you know, they were at the time they were telling me I was going to get 25 years, and I had graduated from USC Law School only a year and a half or so prior. So I was laying there thinking, if this is the end of my life, I need to have a supernatural encounter with a living God.
You know, your story is just such a wild, crazy ride because here you are in this prison in Europe, but your heart desire as a child had always been to do television. And so God redeemed that dream for you, and he gave you an opportunity to work in TV. And you say that even as you became successful in that, because you got out of the prison, they gave you a reduced sentence, you left Europe and got back to the USA as fast as you could.
I fled
you
from
did.
the country and didn't get an absolution from that crime for 10 years.
But then you become this success in television. But you said even at that point, having had that prayer in the jail, having God give you the desires of your heart, you kind of put him in the back seat for a while. That's not unusual. Yeah. We enjoy the blessing so much, we forget the giver. How did God turn your heart back?
You know, it's funny, my heart was always for him, even through this career, because there was this thing that kept nagging at me going, you're not spending time with the Lord the way you did when he first saved you. You know, and it was
Where's
like,
my first love?
yeah,
Yes.
saved but not surrendered.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you're saved but not surrendered, the blessings become the idol instead of the blesser. And that's where I found myself.
What are you doing today?
Well, today I'm back in television, which is really miraculous because when I got on my face and surrendered, the prayer was really simple. God, take the car, the friends, the house. I don't really care. I just know that you saved me from more than this. And I know that my young son, who was the child from that marriage, deserved more because he has a tremendous calling on his life. And so God really took me on a journey of getting to know him on a different level as a mature adult. You know, he sent a man into my life who loved the Lord, who became my friend and prayer partner. And I did not know for the longest that he would become my husband. And it wasn't until God audibly spoke to me and said, this is your husband.
It works really well that way, doesn't it? When you're friends
really,
first.
It works really well that way. There was zero attraction driving it. It was all Jesus.
Yeah.
He could answer my questions, and I wanted to grow so much at the time in my life.
You know, you talk so much in your book about the importance of addressing those places of woundedness in our lives, those places of hurt, those places where we've been made vulnerable, and where we're even still tender and vulnerable because of that. How important is it to living life the way we're told to live it in John for us to deal with these things?
It's Isaiah 61. And I think all people need to understand that the part of Jesus's ministry that is so radical is when he says, I came to bind up the brokenhearted and set the captives free. That brokenness scripturally is referring to the fact that Jesus knew we'd live in a world where we'd get our hearts broken. There would be traumas and events that would break us. That breaking of our soul, only he can bind up. Yeah. And that emotional captivity that you're in, when he sets you free from that, you know that you are free.
You know, it is the reason that Jesus came, to set all of us free. You can read more about Cynthia's life. We have skimmed the surface, believe me, and her career. It's in her memoir called Prodigal Daughter. It's available in stores nationwide. A lot of sound biblical scripture and wisdom in here. If you're struggling in your life, it's a must read. Thank you for being with us. Great to have you here.
Thank you.